Right, let's get one thing straight. This isn't Halloween's slightly more exotic tequila-soaked cousin. Not some Mexican horror show. If you're picturing screaming ghouls and haunted houses, you've bought the wrong ticket. This is Oaxaca, Day of the Dead, Dia de Muertos. It's a whole different kettle of, well, deceased fish. People think it's morbid, all about death, sad faces and black clothes. They couldn't be more wrong. It's a celebration, a party, not for the living entirely, but for those who've clocked out, permanently. They say it's about grief. Sure, there's a touch of remembrance, a nod to those who've passed, but mostly it's a vibrant, noisy, slightly chaotic family reunion. Except some of the guests are, shall we say, less corporeal than others. Invisible perhaps, but definitely expected. The air isn't thick with dread. It's thick with the smell of copal incense and baking bread, and maybe a little bit of cheap beer spilled in reverence, or by accident. Who's to say? The common misconception? That it's all doom and gloom, that everyone is moping around weeping into their mezcal. Utter nonsense. This is a joyous affair. A time to welcome the spirits of the departed back to the land of the living for a brief visit. Think of it as a cosmic open house, with better food, and more flowers. You can't miss the marigolds. Cempasúchil, they call them here. The flower of the dead. Sounds a bit grim, doesn't it? But these aren't your grandma's garden variety blooms. These are vibrant, almost aggressively orange and yellow. They're everywhere, piled high in markets, strung into garlands, scattered on altars, littering the streets like confetti after a particularly wild celestial fiesta. It's a proper floral assault on the senses. In a good way, mostly. Their job? To guide the spirits. Apparently the pungent aroma and bright colors act like a supernatural GPS, leading souls from the great beyond right to their family's doorsteps, or more accurately, to their ofrendas. The altars. Imagine trying to find your way back from the afterlife. You'd want clear signage, wouldn't you? No blurry maps, no recalculating route, just a blazing trail of luminous petals, a fragrant welcome mat. It's not just a casual floral arrangement, mind you, there's an art to it. Paths of petals are laid from the street to the altar. Sometimes all the way to the cemetery, ensuring the spirits don't get lost, or wander into the neighbor's party by mistake. Awkward. Now let's talk about the sugar skulls, Calaveras de Azucar. They're iconic, cheerful, brightly decorated skulls made of pure, unadulterated sugar, sometimes with a name written on the forehead, yours perhaps, or a loved one's. Don't be alarmed, it's not a threat, it's a memento, a sweet reminder of mortality, a bit like eating your own tombstone but tastier, and significantly less permanent. Thank goodness. These aren't just for show though, they're offerings. Placed on the ofrendas for the visiting spirits because apparently even ghosts get a sweet tooth. Alongside the skulls you'll find pan de muerto, bread of the dead, a special sweetbread often decorated with bone-shaped pieces. It's delicious, slightly anise flavored, and probably not something your cardiologist would recommend eating daily. But hey, the spirits have been dead a while. They can handle it. The altars are laden with other goodies too. Fresh fruit, plates of mole, bottles of mezcal or tequila, whatever the deceased enjoyed in life. The idea is to entice them, to make their journey worthwhile. Imagine traveling all the way from the afterlife. The cemeteries. This is where things get really interesting, especially at night. Forget quiet, mournful contemplation. Oaxacan cemeteries during Dia de Muertos are lively. Yes, lively. Families gather around the graves of their loved ones, cleaning them, decorating them with candles and, you guessed it, more marigolds. Mountains of marigolds. It's like a botanical invasion, but a welcome one, for the most part. They bring food, they bring drinks, they bring music. Mariachi bands wander through the rows of tombs, playing heartfelt tunes or sometimes surprisingly upbeat numbers. It's a party, a vigil, a family picnic, all rolled into one, under the stars, surrounded by the silent or not-so-silent company of the dead. It's less spooky than you'd think, more like a community gathering, with a few extra invisible attendees. The atmosphere is surprisingly festive. People chat, they laugh, they share stories about the departed. It's not about wallowing in sorrow, it's about celebrating lives lived. About remembering the good times. The flickering candlelight casts long shadows, illuminating faces that are both solemn and joyful. It's a delicate balance. Section 5, Whispers from Beyond and the Barstool, Local Legends and Libations. Every local has a story, or 10, especially when the mezcal starts flowing. and during Day of the Dead it flows rather freely. Old Don Miguel propping up the bar in a dusty cantina might tell you about his abuela, how she loved a particular brand of cigarettes and how every year he leaves a pack on her altar, and every year by morning one cigarette is mysteriously missing. Not smoked, just gone, vanished, he winks. The spirits, eh? Then there's Sophia, the flower vendor. She swears the marigolds whisper secrets if you listen closely enough. On the nights the spirits walk, she says they tell her who's coming, which souls are restless, which are at peace. She's probably had a bit too much sun, or maybe a bit too much of that home-brewed pulque, but her eyes twinkle with a certainty that's hard to dismiss entirely, especially after your third mezcal. You hear tales of comparsas, processions of costumed revelers, some dressed as skeletons or devils, dancing through the streets, making noise, lots of noise, to wake the dead. Ah, the tourists, flocking to Oaxaca like moths to a particularly vibrant marigold-scented flame. You can spot them a mile off. Brand new cameras, slightly bewildered expressions, often sporting some questionable face paint. Applied with more enthusiasm than skill, bless their cotton socks, they mean well, mostly they've read the blogs, seen the Instagram posts, now they want their slice of authentic cultural experience, whatever that means. They wander through the markets, haggling awkwardly for sugar skulls, taking endless photos of everything and everyone, sometimes forgetting that the people decorating graves are, actual people, not exhibits in a living museum. There's a fine line between appreciation and intrusion, a line some navigate with the grace of a drunken donkey. It's a spectacle within a spectacle. The watchers being watched, or at least mildly judged. You see them at the cemeteries, trying to be solemn, whispering in hushed tones, then whipping out a giant flash camera, blinding some poor abuelita mid-prayer. Oops! Or they're trying to join a comparsa. Their dance moves a fascinating blend of uncoordination and misplaced confidence. It's almost endearing. It's not all sugar skulls and street parties, though there's plenty of that. Dig a little deeper. Venture off the main tourist drag, and you'll find rituals that are quieter, more personal, less performative. In smaller villages, the traditions hold an even tighter grip, passed down through generations, unchanged by the influx of curious outsiders, or at least less changed. This is where the real heart beats. Consider the cleaning of the bones, a ritual in some communities like Pamuch in the Yucatan, though similar reverence for remains exists in Oaxacan villages, not for the faint of heart, or the overly squeamish. Families exhume the remains of their loved ones, carefully clean each bone, then place them in a special box, to be displayed and honored. It's an act of profound intimacy, a stark tangible connection to the ancestors, far removed from novelty face paint. Then there are the specific ofrendas, not just generic altars but highly personalized tributes, tailored to the specific tastes and habits of the deceased. Did Uncle Pepe love a particular brand of cigarettes? They're on the altar. Did little Sophia adore a certain type of sweet? A bowl of them sits waiting. It's these details, these small acts of remembrance, that give the tradition its power, its emotional resonance, its love really, in tangible form. We've touched on pan de muerto and sugar skulls, but the culinary offerings for the spirits and the living go much deeper. Oaxaca is a food lover's paradise any day of the year. During Dia de Muertos, it's a full-blown gastronomic pilgrimage. The markets heave with seasonal ingredients. The air is thick with the aroma of complex moles, simmering for hours, a symphony of chilies, nuts, spices, and a hint of chocolate. Each family has its own secret recipe, guarded more fiercely than state secrets. Then there's tejate, a pre-Hispanic maize and cacao drink, frothy, nutty, refreshing, served in brightly painted gourds. It looks a bit like muddy water with foam on top, but tastes surprisingly good. The spirits supposedly enjoy its essence, and the living certainly enjoy the actual drink. It's fuel for the long nights of vigil, and the long days of preparation. A taste of ancient tradition, still thriving. Don't forget the chapulines, toasted grasshoppers, yes, grasshoppers seasoned with garlic, lime, and chili, a crunchy, savory snack. Not for everyone perhaps, but a Oaxacan speciality, and a protein hit for weary souls, both living and spectral. You see them piled high in markets, next to the mounds of marigolds. So, the party's winding down. The last of the copal smoke has cleared. The marigold petals are starting to wilt. The spirits, presumably well-fed and well-feted, are heading back to wherever it is they spend the other 363 days of the year. The sugar skulls might have a few nibbles missing, Or maybe that was just Uncle Roberto after one too many mezcals. Who's to say? The important thing is, they came, they were welcomed, they were remembered. What do you take away from all this, beyond a potential hangover and a camera full of colorful photos? Hopefully an appreciation for a tradition that stares mortality in the face, and then throws it a fiesta. It's a healthy perspective, isn't it, to acknowledge death, to integrate it into life rather than hiding it away, pretending it doesn't exist. The Oaxacans get it. They understand that life and death are two sides of the same coin, constantly flipping. It's not about being morbid. It's about lineage, about connection, about the comforting thought that those who've gone before are still part of the story, still have a seat at the table, even if it's just for a couple of nights a year. It's a beautiful, life-affirming ritual disguised in the trappings of death. Clever, eh? They've turned grief into a celebration, loss into a reunion. That takes a special kind of genius, a cultural masterpiece. So as you pack your bags, slightly heavier with local crafts and maybe a smuggled bottle of artisanal mezcal, remember this: death isn't the end of the party.